Awesome. Hey, everybody. We are here at Floor Mechanics today with Jean and RJ from Pallmann, and we are going to be demoing some products. So we've got some products out today that we're going to be talking about, and we get to demonstrate the use of a new product that Floor Mechanics carries, Hapwood. So we'll be using this panel, this is an older existing panel, for parts of today's demo. Most of it will be done on a brand new Hapwood panel. You can see it's still got some glue on it. But we are very excited about working with Hapwood. And we are so excited too about the synergy between Hapwood and Pallmann. So Hapwood's unfinished engineered products allow Pallmann's Hardwood Complete story to be on full display. So here's how. First, Hapwood can be installed with any of the Pallmann adhesives and applied with a Pallmann trowel. And while a Cobra belt sander could be used with Hapwood, the Pallmann Spider is all that's really needed. The Hapwood is already sanded to like an 80 or 100 grit sequence in the manufacturing process, and that's followed by precision tongue and groove milling using diamond tooling, resulting in a pre-sanded floor without overwood. So what this means for you is that one pass with either a Cobra or a Spider is all that you need before, applying stain or just moving on to your next step. Choosing from the wide variety of Pallmann magic oils and finishes, and then maintaining the floor with the Pallmann floor care system rounds out the Pallmann Hardwood Complete story using Hapwood. But we're so excited about this. We love it. We are sending out samples. If you want to get a sample, we will send you. This is the exact same kind that we're going to be using in our demonstration today. So this is the white oak Northern Millcrafted. It's a 5-ply with a 3.2 millimeter wear layer. If you want to get a sample like this, hold it in your hand, see the construction, we can send that out to you. Just let us know. One of the things that we love about Hapwood also, and that makes it a complementary part of the Floor Mechanics Pallmann Hapwood story, is that Hapwood uses fewer trees per square foot than any other unfinished flooring product. So this goes along with Pallmann, that environmentally friendly product line, because Pallmann is continually working to be a world leader in green technology that reduces the carbon footprint too. So this partnership works super well. There are way too many benefits of Hapwood for us to cover right now, but if you would like to learn more, please visit our website, floormechanics.com. If you do /Hapwood, it'll take you directly to that page with more information. Or you can give us a call at 1-800-372-5090, and we are happy to answer any questions you have. But now, let's move on to some of the products that we are going to be using in our demonstration today. So we're not going to be live for all of today, but we will be posting these videos in the upcoming weeks and months so that you can get all the information. You can learn more about the Pallmann products. So I am going to turn it over to you, RJ.
Thank you,
if you want to tell us a little bit more about what we're going to be covering.
So we're going to start with a little bit of subfloor prep with our copper disc setup on our hard plate with the Spider to get the OSB ready. Basically, any product like a Hapwood, the subfloor needs to be very flat and smooth to get all the benefits out of that. So we're going to do a little of that. We're going to show Palex filler, both standalone with sawdust and combined with a Woodwise quick patch powder. Kind of show how those work together and make a really, really good filler. We're going to touch on two of our sealers today, Nature Seal and White Seal. We'll touch on both of these, both what they're designed for and how to apply them. And we'll talk about our two-component product in a separate video, the Palex Gold, and kind of the advantage of this and what we've done with this guy. And we're going to focus a lot, because it's my favorite product, on the Spider. So we're going to do a little setup, a little how to run it in sanding on the Hapwood. And then we'll touch on a couple, if we have time, we'll touch on a couple of the other little accessory products in the line. Again,
I mean, you've got a full lineup, a full,
Yeah, we are a Hardwood Complete line now. We're definitely growing and maturing, or as my kids would say, growing and changing. That was a class I had to take in junior high. So, but we're definitely evolving into a full Like if you want to do a Pallmann floor, we can do a Pallmann floor start to finish now, and that's very really exciting. And yeah, so we're gonna have some outfit changes today. We're gonna have we're gonna have a little bit of fun talking about the products and kind of what we think about hardwood floors and what we at Pallmann kind of believe we can do with them.
Perfect. And we are so excited. If any of you have any questions for us during the day, feel free to just let us know. We will answer them as we get to them. And yeah, if there's anything you want to see, just let us know. So thanks, everyone.
Hey guys, I'm RJ Samala with Pallmann. And just a little short history. I was a contractor back in Denver for about 24 years. And to be perfectly honest, I was a very good installer and I was a semi-good sander. So subfloor prep was always really, really critical to me. It was very important. And then with the new product that Floor Mechanics is offering in their Hapwood, it's subfloor prep or anything in the pre-finished world or a site finish engineer that's sanded without much overwood, the subfloor has to be really flat. So we've got a little bit of an answer for that. I used a lot of bolt-on two-sided paper with these guys. I went through a lot of it. And Pallmann, we've had these copper discs for a long time. They were designed as an adhesive removal system, 14, 16, and 24 grit. But we kind of found over the years that just for regular OSB or plywood preparation, the 24 grit bolted on does a really, really good job under a regular buffer or an exceptional job under the Pallmann Spider. So this is just a regular hard plate, can bolt on two-sided paper. But like I say, these will last you, it really, if you treat them right, it should be a once-in-a-lifetime purchase. So mounts on like regular buffer plate, and then with the Spider and OSB, I would typically run this about 160, 170 RPM like a normal floor buffer, just so if you do have a nail, you can stop, hammer the nail in. That's really the only thing you're going to do to hurt the copper disc is if you just grind on a nail or something. So just stop, hammer it in, and you should get, I mean, they should last you several years. Oh, we did not turn on the vacuum, Gino. Can you do that for me so we don't make a huge mess? Let me turn that off quick. And so then basically, instead of bringing in your edger, which is you know, is a more of a precision piece of equipment to sand down your seams, you can pretty much do it sanding up. It's less dusty with a copper disc than it was with the bolt-on sandpaper, just because it's it chips it a little bit more almost than sands it. But you can get all your subfloors flat, perfect, right out of the gate, just with the 124 grit. And then, like I say, if you get into a different situation where you need to take some adhesive off of a concrete, or you need to take some thin set out of an entryway, then maybe the 14 or the 16 grit would maybe be more appropriate for that because it'll dig in a little bit more. Super versatile, and they really should last you, as long as you need them. So that's kind of the subfloor prep on from Floor Mechanics today. Alrighty, so the Pallmann Spider, basically a planetary sanding device. In the subfloor prep side, which we're kind of working on today for either grinding OSB with the Ninja plate and grinding on concrete, the machine comes with one 35-pound additional weight. It comes with that. In the concrete world, you can actually go to 2 weights. In the wood world, we saw no advantage, so you'll see some videos in Europe of people running multiple weights on it. We didn't see any advantage in the sanding world, but in the concrete world, sometimes there is an advantage to a secondary weight to build this machine. The machine itself weighs about 88 pounds. The light, which is an accessory that we have now, the LED light, this is only about 6 pounds. It's not actually a weight. It's just about a 6-pound light. But then these just slide on and off, and you can So for typical hardwood sanding and most subfloor prep, this is going to be your setup. But in a situation where you're doing a little bit of concrete grinding, then you could actually add an additional weight to that. These are sold separately. You can get an extra one, and that will give you just a little bit more downforce for a thin set removal or scarifying of concrete for epoxy, that type of stuff. That's kind of the, otherwise the machine comes complete, and yeah.
And so they all, I mean, that's a really easy stack there
It's a
to put
very
on.
easy stack. Typically the light removes in the same way. It's just a floating system, but because of where it's plugged in, typically you're going to leave the light in place. So the light will, there are some guys that will pull this off. They'll slide their weight on here at this level and put the light on top of it. Cast a little bit different shadow. Either way works fine, but typically most guys are going to leave the light in place just because of where it plugs in down here. It does take a minute or two to unplug it and replug it in each time. So, but you can run it in this manner as well. And that's the yeah. The light is actually, we were just talking about it with some colleagues, in the LED technology and the casting of light now. It's not a harsh light. It's not showing scratches that are inappropriate. It only, so because some of the really bright halogens, you're seeing scratches that are going to be irrelevant in the long term. So there's more thought goes into that than what I ever realized as an old contractor. But the light, it's very nice casting of shadow. So. Hi guys, RJ again with Pallmann. Talking about the Pallmann Spider, and this will be basically, I would call this Pallmann Spider 101. So you just bought yourself a new Spider, and you got to set it up for the first time, and you don't have a Pallmann territory rep there with you. So the things we want you to look for, first of all, comes with a triple disc. This is very heavy. It's about 37 pounds. I'll show you how to mount it in a minute. But before we do anything with the machine, there's going to be 3 interface pads that come in a little tool bag. These are to personal preference. I personally run this interface pad with every sanding step. So 50, 80, and then I will switch to another pad for one of the Norton Mesh Power. But some guys will run the first cut direct on the satellite heads. I like this better. I haven't seen any disadvantage to dish out or not making the floor quite as flat, and it just gives you a little safety net to the floor. If a piece of paper overheats or you catch a flaker board and you ruin this Velcro, this you can just have a new one in the van and put it on. If you ruin the Velcro on here, that you have to scrape off, clean, put the new adhesive sticker on there, let that cure overnight. So it's going to slow you down. So I run this on every job. Comes with 3 of them. I would order 3 of them so you always have an extra set in your van. That's just a little tip. The triple head itself, you should be able to spin this triple head easily with one hand. If there's any catch or bite in here at all, on a brand new machine, it's going to be because the chain was misadjusted in Germany. We've seen it happen a couple times. It's not normal. But if this is not spinning just freely with very little pressure, then the first thing we want to check is flip this over. And on the chain, we want about that much play. You want to be able to pull it down to where it almost comes into this spacing here. But it needs a little bit of play, a little bit of looseness. If this is completely stiff and tight, we need you to loosen this bolt, and then this cog just has a little slide channel in. Literally takes about 1 minute. Loosen the bolt, get a little bit of play in your chain, retighten that nut, and you'll be good to go. We've seen it happen a couple times where maybe Hans or Frederick, maybe showed up and they were a little overzealous that day and they got it very tight. So just make sure the chain has a little bit of play in it. The clutch plate that comes on it, this is a designed weak point in the system. So if you ever do wander off the edge of a sanding board or you hit a heater vent, we want this to break because this is about a $17, $18 part, as opposed to having anything inside of here break, which can cost you about $800 to fix. So this is a designed weak point. Having said that, it will wear out. It's not a permanent piece. So, and depending on how much you're running it, I want you to make sure that these tabs are in place and in good contact, that there's nothing broken on those 3 tabs. And I would strongly suggest having one of these also on the van for a replacement, just in case. Because like I say, we would rather break something that you can replace in 2 minutes on the job site if something does happen. This machine puts a lot of force to the floor, and other than that, there's no maintenance involved. In the triple head, you don't need to lube the chain or anything. You just run, blow it off. This one, do as I say, not as I do. This should be blown off after every job or daily, just to keep the dust from coagulating on here. Obviously, I'm an old contractor, so it's not perfectly clean. So that's the triple head. That's the first part. Second part. So this machine has been used. It's not brand new out of the box. When it comes in the box, there'll be a rubber bumper, very similar to this one, on here. And to get this dust skirt in place, we need you to pull this off. I fielded numerous phone calls of guys can't get their dust skirt on because it physically won't fit over this rubber bumper. Again, you would have to ask somebody else. I don't know why the rubber bumper still comes on the machine, because we're not going to run this machine without the dust skirt. That's a question that we'll ask the Germans when we get to it. But so take that off. Then this just simply hangs. Get it lined up. You want the black to be about level to even with the dark metal on your machine. Stretch it up into place. Then it has 2 compression straps that you just snug down, and then your dust skirt will compress up over the machine. It does have to be taken on and off every day. The machine, unless you build a block or something in your van for this to set on, this does not clear the floor. So this comes off, gets stored on the shelf, the machine sets upright. Don't store your machine with the triple head attached to it, because it doesn't sit perfectly flat, so it will compress those interface pads a little bit unevenly. So don't store the machine. If you're hauling it around, take the dust skirt off, set it up. If you go to lunch, just lean the machine back like this. So that's kind of the basically getting the dust skirt on. Okay, so this is just a normal mounting head, like a buffer, but since this weighs 37 pounds, instead of standing out in front of the buffer or the spider, I stand behind it so I can brace this machine with my knees. Get it centered on here, pull it up towards you slightly, and twist down to the right, and then it's locked in place. Don't set this on the floor, tip the machine up into it, start the machine. Again, it's way too much force that this is not a regular buffer. This is doing a whole different job, and you will break that clutch plate if you do that. So get it on here, get it centered, pull it up and towards you, and then push your right hand down, and it'll lock it in place. That's basically, now you're mounted and ready to start sanding. The machine tips up, sits on the floor like that. It comes with this weight, so this will be in the box. Simply slides on and holds in place. We do sell the light as an accessory. There's a plug underneath this box on every spider. The light weighs about 6 pounds, slides on, plugs in, and then it will turn on as soon as we plug it in. But the weight just simply slides on and off, and then in the instructions you'll see kind of when to use the weight, when not to use the weight. You can experiment with it a little bit, but that's it just slides and sets in place. There's no tools or anything to mount it. So from there, the has a cord holder. It's the only cord holder that I've ever used in the industry, because on my big machine I did the wrong thing. I always hung it around my neck like this. That is not proper, but it will come with this cord. The Americans are going to think that this is not a 220 cord. It is. It just doesn't have as much insulation. So in Europe, they don't have the same requirements for insulation around the wiring that we do. So the same gauge cable as your big machine cord now, 250 30 amp plugs, but it is a lot thinner and a lot more flexible. It's the twist lock. Light comes on. this little light right here will come on. That means there is power to the unit. That's physically what this little red light means. Then we have a series of lights here on the side. These go green, 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 yellow, and red. These are usage lights. So that will monitor how much power the machine is using, and we want to keep it in the green. Once it starts to flick up into the yellow and the red, we want to slow the machine down a little bit or remove a weight. Either way, but we're asking a little bit too much of the machine, it's going to shut itself off. It's going to say, hey, this is more than I want to do today, kind of like me. It's going to turn itself off. So from there, on the back of the machine, there's a black button here at the top. That is to lay the handle back. Make sure you bring the machine to room temperature. If it's a very, very cold day, don't force this. Get the machine in the unit. This is a hydraulic cable, so that oil needs to come up in temperature. If it's 10 below, that oil's not going to do what it's supposed to do, so give it a few minutes. Then at that point, you push the button and the handle will just lay back on its own. And then whatever height you want it at, you let go of the button and it'll stop. But do not force that. Let that happen on its own. Again, just because it's a hydraulic fluid. Vacuum port here, machine will run off any 1.5-inch vacuum. We'll talk about the our vacuum a little bit in a different video, but we have an 1.5-inch port. Any decent vacuum will work. The dust containment on this machine is second to none. So lay the handle back, normal buffer position. I go about 1 inch below my belt personally. You kind of ride it on your hip, and then it's a variable speed machine. And from there, first cut, and again, that's all in the instructions, so we won't get into that today. But then to physically start the machine, you push the yellow button, pull the handle, our power lights, our usage lights will come on. Then you can let go of the yellow button and it will start. And that's all there is to getting it started on your first day. So Pallmann dust skirt for the Spider. There's typically, the machine will have a rubber bumper like this here in place. Pull that off real quick because this will not fit over that rubber bumper. Then you have this kind of center line on here, 2 compression straps. So thread your dust skirt over the top, kind of center the 2 straps over that metal par. It will also be even with the dark metal here. So this is the light. Get the skirt up to where it's about even with that metal. That way you can slide the weights on and off, and then give it a tug, and give it a tug. And that's all there is to mounting it. I typically take these and I thread them into the little pocket here, and then with a construction pencil or a drive, I'll just push them in there so that then they're stored away nice and flat and they're not hanging on the floor. And then the dust skirt comes up and down, compresses over the machine like that. Then you can go on to mounting your head on and sanding. All right. All right. Well, hey, I'm RJ with Pallmann. Here at Floor Mechanics, we're going to do a little sanding on a new product that they're offering called Hapwood with the Pallmann Spider. So typically with the Pallmann Spider, as a standalone unit, we're going to be going through a sequence of 50 grit, 80 grit, and then on to 100 grit screen or mesh power or finishing device, all with the Spider. With this product, we're kind of eliminating the first steps because of the way they mill this, and that's kind of what it's designed to do, is that it's a pre-sanded but site finished product. So we're actually just going to sand this with 100 grit, and then in subsequent videos we'll put on some of our sealers and stuff. But so we're basically going to start sanding with the Spider. So with the head that's on the Spider, 37 pounds, very heavy. So I like to stand behind the unit, lift it in place, get it centered, pull it up towards you, and twist down to the right to lock it in place. Now you're ready to sand. From there, we're going to stand the machine up. And for this application, we're going to spin this at about between 200 and 240 RPMs. It's a variable speed machine. And again, since the wood we're working on, we don't want to over polish it. We're going to slow the machine down slightly. At this point, I would still recommend running the weight because it helps shatter the abrasives appropriately to reduce scratching. So it actually, at this stage with the 100 grit paper that's on there, it will actually leave less scratches with the extra weight. And then we would, if we did go to a buffing stage, we would take the weight off at that time. So lay the handle back into your normal buffer position, and Gene can start the vacuum. So with the spider, we run about a half of a machine overlap, and I prefer to go one direction, get across the room, and then I like to finish coming back in the exact same direction, in the same opposite direction, same line. And then repeat that process as we move across the floor. And so as you can see in this application, we had a little bit of extra glue to deal with on this panel. But even with the extra adhesive, we're able to take it off without a lot of extra time and basically present a very flat floor with a single pass. And then because we are on a panel, I would recommend buffing this one or running 100 grit mesh power just to handle any scratches that we leave in the surface at that time, and depending on what your final application is going to be as far as product, whether you're staining it or just going with a regular sealer. That's kind of all there is to sanding with the spider on a wood that is this flat and smooth to start with. It's a pretty fast, time-saving, low dust, low noise operation at that point. All right, well, we just finished sanding a couple panels here, and just a real quick note, all this dust is bad. It's bad for you, and it's bad for the equipment. So take a minute, vacuum it off. If you got a blower or compressor, blow it off. Especially our spider head. There's a lot of moving parts on the top of this, and we want to get as much of this dust off of here after every use as possible. Plus, it'll keep your vans nicer, your trucks nicer. And this is how we're making a living. This stuff is important, so keep it as nice and clean as possible. Just a decent vacuum or a little battery operated leaf blower. Any of those things will help dramatically. Literally just a couple minutes like that each day, guys, will make all of your equipment just cleaner, easier, nicer. Getting in and out of the house, you're not dumping sawdust on the driveway. So just a little quick point there. So just a little tip again, if you're not running a Tampico brush, these microfiber dusting mops go a long ways for getting that dust out of the grain that your vacuum can't quite get. So one of the things we deal with in the waterborne world is grain raise. Well, probably 40 to 50% of that, no matter how good your vacuum is, 40 to 50% of that is dust that's physically stuck in the grain. It's loose dust that comes out. So one of these, this would be what I call my version or a poor man's version of a Tampico brush, or a Tampico brush on your buffer to get down there and really knock that dust out of the open grain will solve most of your grain raise problems. So, and also if you're a T-bar applicator, it will help quite dramatically with tannin pull on a white oak floor because you're not pushing dust across, leaving it in a puddle, because that dust, the tannin in that dust is going to activate. So just a little inside tip or little extra trip to get that dust out of the grain. This will generate static electricity. You can grab it, or a Tampico brush. So kind of the last thing you do before you either water pop or start coating. All right, so we've got a panel here, sanded to 60 grit, and we've got our new Pallex filler. So this is it's a fiber reinforced latex-based wood filler. The fibers are to maintain size, so it doesn't suffer as much shrinkage when the water evaporates. It's designed to be mixed with sawdust from the floor. So if you need an exact match for a Brazilian cherry, an Ipe, a Santos mahogany, anything that's going to patina very specifically, or on a regular oak floor, you can mix it with decent 80 to 100 grit edger dust. That is one way to use this product. Another way to use it that is very advantageous is to combine it with a competitor of ours, Woodwise. They're quick patch powders. They come in several different colors. And so if you're not looking for an actual exact patina match as the floor ages, these two products in conjunction will actually work. They actually help each other because this one is designed to be used in water. It's got an adhesive in it. But it does set up pretty quickly, whereas this is an adhesive designed to be mixed with another dust. So now you have two adhesives and two non-shrinking fillers to work together. And it's one of the situations where they really work together well. If you've got large knot holes to fill, this stuff comes in a knot brown and a mineral streak black. And a lot of times you'll mix it up in a little cup like this, and you're going to end up wasting about half of it because it hardens before you can get it spread into all the knot holes. Well, you can keep it emulsified by adding a little bit more of this, a little bit more of the powders, and fill all those knot holes in a custom color. I really like when they're done in black. It just looks really sharp. They stand out. And again, it makes it where they're both the products actually work better. What we're going to do here today is we've got some red oak. We've got this panel. So we're just going to use them together. Again, this was a resand, so the sawdust wouldn't be appropriate here because it has some color in it. And we're going to be switching the color of this panel. Okay, so with this, so with the Pallex filler, like everything in the Pallmann line cannot be overshaken. Shake everything with the Pallmann as much as you can or want to, cannot be overshaken. Again, this has some fibers in it, so the fibers can settle to the bottom. They need to be re-agitated into, you'll see when I pour it, it's a relatively thick viscosity, the adhesive itself. So, so shake it very well. You can actually see where some of the fiber has settled here, and this is clear carrying liquid, and the fiber is actually settled down here. So that's just, and these are designed not to shrink as they dry. So now you can kind of see we've got that the line is the same color. We don't have all the fiber settled in the bottom. So again, don't be afraid to shake it. Shake it as much as you can. I like to mix this with either the sawdust or with the Woodwise powder in a separate container because I've had a couple instances where as I'm mixing it on the floor, make your little dust volcano, but I've had some of this leach into the floor before I could get it all mixed together. So I think it's a little bit cleaner to do it this way. Can be mixed together on the floor. I just think it's a little bit messier, so I like to do it this way. So get yourself some powder. In this case, I would say less is more. I have mixed up batches that I thought would be appropriate and it was way too much. So I just start with a couple little scoops of powder like that. Again, we're just on one 4x8 panel, so we don't need a ton. And then here you can adjust. So you can see it's a relatively thick liquid, but you can adjust at this point how thick you want your wood filler to be. So if you're working in big knots or really large gaps that you can just physically putty knife into one spot, mix it a little bit thicker. It's just less product to physically have to dry. It will just, there's less water in it, so it will have to dry. In this situation, we're going to want it pretty trowelable, pretty liquid, because we're dealing with smaller gaps and not a huge area, so not a huge hole to fill. So I'm going to mix up just a little bit more here. So that's kind of one of the nice things about it, is you can kind of gauge exactly how much you're going to be needing. If you need a little bit more, you can mix up a little bit more. If you want a little bit thicker for one room, a little bit thinner for another room, you'll end up with the same result. So we'll just mix up enough here that we have some to trowel. So again, get it to the kind of the thickness that you want. Fairly runny, but not outrageous. It's very low VOC. There's almost no odor to it at all. I don't want a bunch of complaints and comments on the stream here that your rep doesn't have knee pads on. They didn't fit in my suitcase, so I didn't bring knee pads. So that's but I'm not going to stand into it either, because I don't have that kind of flexibility. So we're going to kneel without knee pads, and it's fine. It's okay. I don't advise it, but. So get your puddle pulled out onto the floor. This product does need to be spread with a stainless steel trowel. So we're going to use the bladed, flexible stainless steel trowel. You can slide these up and down to adjust the firmness that you want. But do make sure these screws are tight, because you don't want this stiffening blade to come loose and fall all the way down. So you want it about like that. And then depending on and here we want to try to go not exactly perpendicular to the crack. We want to kind of go at an angle so that we're forcing it down into the physical gap itself. And then Heidi, if you kind of want to show like a gap here, to just, it's going to look like any of the pre-mixed fillers at this point. You'll see as it dries, it's going to dry a little bit clearer. But the main thing is that it's just, it's really a non-shrink filler. That's the most important part about it. Get just a little bit more out of here so we can finish off the panel, and then we're going to eat a little pizza before we come back. We're going to let it dry, and then we'll sand it off. Typical, it's going to dry very similar in time to most of the pre-mixed fillers out there, and that's going to be just completely dependent on climate and dependent on gap size. So there isn't any magic formula in here that's going to make it dry in an exact amount of time, but it's the dry times are very similar. And that's kind of Pallix filler in a nutshell. And like I say, mixed with sawdust for the perfect patina, or used in conjunction with Woodwise to get a to really aid in both products. They actually both will work better together. So, but again, if you can mix it with straight sawdust, Brazilian cherry, stuff like that, where you need it to patina perfectly, you won't have that pink stripe 2 years from now. It will age the same. Walnuts is the same way. And yeah, fantastic product. And at my advanced stage, this is a lot easier to carry than those 3-gallon jugs, because I don't know how they make them heavier every year, but they get heavier every year. Whereas this is, I can still carry this. So there you go. All right, guys. So just want to talk quickly about Pallmann's borderline obsession with sealers and how and what they do for the floor. And we're a 3-coat system. So we want 1 coat of sealer. We have 4 sealers on the line. We have clear and color here. And then we're 2 coats of finish. And we will guarantee, and I don't throw that word around lightly, we will promise you that 1 coat of sealer and 2 coats of finish will outperform 3 coats of finish every time. The way these are designed is to provide a small shock absorber at the floor. It's a larger molecule. It sits on top, gives you a higher build of finish to sit on top to protect the floor. And so that is why we are very, very sealer centric in our system of finishes. So we want a single coat of these and 2 coats of any of the finishes on top of that as our 3-coat system. And then we have clear, color, nature's own white seal as for design options. But the principle is the same, is that this is sealing the floor. The wood is moving all the time, so this is softer than finish, so it provides a slight shock absorber for the finish so it doesn't crack. And that is why we are very, very, very sealer centric. We're always going to want a sealer and 2 coats of finish in any application. Raw wood, stained wood, that's the route we're always going to advise you to go. And we have a lot of data to back up that it will perform better than 3 coats of finish. Hey guys, I'm RJ with Pallmann here at Floor Mechanics, talking about what is a surprise to me a little bit. So I was a contractor 24 years. I was an early convert to the Pallmann line. And when I took this job 8.5 years ago, I would have made 2 bets that you couldn't make a better sealer than our Pallix 325, which has now been renamed Clear. We still have it in the line. And you couldn't make a better single component finish than 96. I was wrong in both cases. Pallix Color is a color enhancing sealer that will lock in the color of the stain, and it's actually more forgiving than Clear. This is the most forgiving sealer on the market, bar none. And topped with Power, which is just now the premium single component product on the market, it breaks my heart a little bit, but it has outpaced 96 in its just chemical abilities, what it can do to the floor. It is a physically better single component than even 96 was. And if guys are if you're thinking about getting into waterborne, if you haven't made the switch yet, if you've struggled with other products, use this as your first coat and this as your second coat, and you will, if you just go through the system, we'll promise you that you will have success with it. It is very forgiving. It's very beautiful. This adds a little color. This is perfectly clear. The transition of the wood or the stain color is just so perfect, and it's locked in for so long because the way this product worked is it doesn't allow the stains to kind of fade with time, or the finish that look that we've always gotten between an oil stain and a waterborne finish kind of becoming less lustrous over the years or a little bit foggy. This will really lock in that color. And then one of the Pallmann finishes on top. This is the premium single component. If you do those 2 together, like I say, you will be on a waterborne path, and it'll get you out of the oil modified world for sure. All right, guys. It's RJ again with Pallmann. We're going to get into putting down the nature seal and the white seal on these panels, and a little trick that I'm not going to take credit for it. Another territory manager of ours out of Tennessee, Jason Mack, came up with this, but it makes perfect sense when you think about it. It's a pigmented product and you need it to absorb evenly. What's the best way to get the grain perfectly even? It's water popping. So even though this is technically kind of an extra step, these panels have been sanded to 100 grit mesh power on the spider, and then so they're not overly smooth, but they're pretty smooth. But to get that pigment to lay and absorb evenly, we're going to go ahead and water pop these. It's a nice little extra safety step, and then we'll get into the actual application of the Nature Seal and White Seal and kind of how we like to do that. Million different ways to water pop. Pad, sprayer, rag by hand. These are obviously just 4x8 panels, so we're just going to go rag by hand. And unlike a stain, as long as these go back to visibly dry, we don't need to meter check these or anything because we're a water-based product. So if we're visibly dry to the surface, we're good to go with the Nature Seal and White Seal. So, and it's just a nice little safety tip to get the pigment to absorb perfectly evenly. So still, you can never get it all. It's not possible. And again, it doesn't have to be overly wet, just surface wet. And then once we're surface dry, we'll be good to apply the Nature Seal and White Seal. Unlike a stain where you need to be very sure that your water is completely dry. So, hey guys, it's RJ with Pallmann. We're here today at Floor Mechanics talking about Nature Seal and White Seal specifically. So there are two newest sealers. They're not new. They've been around for a couple years now, but they are pigmented sealers. So they are identical products in the bottle. The only difference is physical pigment load. So Nature Seal is about 1.1% white. White Seal is 1.8% white. So it's about twice as white. Doesn't sound like a heavy pigment load, but it's a very powerful pigment. So it will make a white floor. If you do 2 coats with a White Seal, you will have a very white floor. Again, they are identical products. So if you can put a Nature Seal down, oh, we want a little bit whiter, you can coat over the top of that with White Seal. They could actually be mixed together if you needed to. Wouldn't advise it, it's hard to repair unless you have an exact ratio. But they are identical products except for pigment load. This is our standard 11 millimeter microfiber roller that we use for all of our waterborne products. Works fine with Nature Seal and White Seal. We also added a 9 millimeter, so a little bit shorter, just to control the amount of product that you're putting down on the floor. Either one of them will work. We kind of steer guys towards the shorter napped roller just because you can get less product on the floor, but either one of them will work. I've got the shorter napped roller loaded up on here. These products, really like to work out of a paint tray with these products. It is very beneficial to get the product evenly, because if you pour it on the floor and you develop that line, now you have to move that line a lot to get it to disperse. Whereas if I'll show you as we go through with the roller, we can put it evenly across our 4-foot coating area. So we don't have any walls here, so I won't go through the practice, but typically cut in just with a decent latex brush. And we're really making sure that we get it underneath any baseboards so we don't have a dark line right there at the baseboard. But as we cut in, we would cut our butt joints cross grain like this, tuck it under the baseboard, You can feather it out a little bit if you want. But really that's about all the cut-in we're doing with the, and then in our corners, we're going to cut our corners and our door jambs with the brush. Most of it we're doing with the roller. So that's the physical cut-in. You can use a trim pad. You can use a brush. You could use a mini roller for a lot of it. I jumped ahead again. Heidi reminded me of this earlier. So one thing, this panel's been sanded to 100 grit mesh power on the spider. So relatively smooth, not overly smooth, but relatively smooth. But then to get the product even, one of our colleagues in our company, Jason Mack out of Nashville, Tennessee, he came to us after he got hired and he said, hey, every time I use a pigmented product, I like to water pop the floor. And I've been doing this for 32 years and I had never water popped a floor sealer, but a light bulb went off for me. It really made sense that we're looking for even pigment absorption, just like you are with stain. So why wouldn't you water pop? It makes a lot of sense. So not 100% required, but it will make it easier to get these products even across the floor if you do water pop. You don't need to let the water pop dry overnight. These are water-based products, waterborne products. So at that point, once it is visibly dry on the surface, you're clear to go. Whereas if you're staining it, you need to meter check it or wait overnight to get that water to dry. So I'm going to pull up a little product in my big paint tray. I'm going to roll it back out so that I'm a pretty dry roller. I'm not dripping anywhere. And then in a big house or anywhere, I'm going to work in about a 4-foot wide section. And I'm going to spread the product out kind of like that, like what I call a W. And then I'll always leave on a corner while I'm always going to leave myself a place to step out so that I can cross cut in along the baseboard. So I can pull that out that distance away from the wall. That's how I move my cutout in and keep it all even everywhere. So I don't have a possibility of a transition between a brush or pad coat and the roller. So I'm going to cut that like that. I'm actually a little bit dry here, so I'm going to keep this shallow. So I'm going to come across, hand on top of the pole, a little bit of weight. I'm going to roll through it again. So now I get that entire 4-foot wide section wet. You can hear the roller. That's a little bit different from what we're used to. And then I'm going to come just slightly behind my wet line, and I'm going to feather this out. And this product, you can't physically overwork it like a lot of waterborne products. This you could roll through it as many times as you need to get it even. It is going to dry, so we do want to keep moving backwards. The length walls on a strip oak are not going to give you a lot of grief as far as overlapping them a little bit. This line is the line you want to keep moving backwards. So on a real hot day, maybe you're shrinking this down to about 3 feet. On a normal day, you're 4 to 5 feet wide across the room wall to wall. So that I'm going to go back in, get myself a little bit of product, roll it back out so that I'm pretty dry. Again, pretty dry. I'm going to do what I kind of call the W, where I just get it across the surface. Then I'm going to go through it. I'm not picking up the roller at this point. I'm just now going to get my entire surface, my entire square wet. Come across like that. Once I'm there, then I'm going to roll through it and feather out into the field. Okay, and if you have a heavy line like this, guys, come back in there and pick that up. Don't leave it there. It will show. It is white, so it will show. Then we're just going to repeat that process across the floor. These are solvent-free, so they're going to take longer to dry than clear and color, our other sealers in our line. These we want an actual 90 minutes for these to dry before recoating them. Being solvent-free, they just take slightly longer for the water to evaporate, and we don't want water soaking into the floor from here. Again, they can be single coated, they can be double coated. I would say on a white oak surface, we're pretty much going to recommend you to do 2 coats because we want to take the permeability down because we have decent tannin blockers in this product. But as thin as we're putting it on, we need a little bit more product to really help dissolve that tannin so that it doesn't show once we put a water-based finish on there. So on a white oak, not 100% necessary, but you will have better luck with doing a second coat of these products. I kind of think of it like painting a wall. There's a lot of paints out there that say you can paint them in 1 coat. I promise you it's easier and it's going to be a better job if you do it in 2 with paint and with these as well. So we'll keep moving this back. We're going to let this dry for about an hour, and then we're going to put some another coat on and then some finish. So thanks for watching, guys. And yeah, hit us up with any questions. All right, guys. So Pallmann Pallix Power, if you want to stick with me for a minute here, single component technology in the waterborne world. Basically, we're turning a liquid from a solid, and your little balls of urethane have legs on them, and they join together, and that's what is left on the floor as the water and the other chemicals evaporate. And in single component technology,